You're listening to the Motivated Mindset Podcast with Bobby Stein.
This is the Cuban Superman, Rafael Denis, and you're listening to Bobby Stein with the Motivated Podcast. Motivated Mindset Podcast.
You're a rock star.
So don't listen to the haters. Do what you want to do and go after your goals like your life depends on it, because it does. You know what I mean?
Hello, my name is Bobby Stein, your host of the Motivated Mindset Podcast, where I share candid conversations with extraordinary folks from all walks of life to discover just what motivates their mindset. Welcome in and thanks for listening.
Hey everybody, this is Bobby Stein, your host of the Motivated Mindset Podcast. I hope that wherever you're watching or listening today that you're doing absolutely amazing. And today I am fortunate indeed. I've got a longtime friend, known him probably 10, 12 years now. He is a husband, he's a father, he's a power lifter, that's for darn sure, a former bodybuilder. He's known to many as the Cuban Superman. He's also the owner and founder of Elite Shield Florida, which we're going to learn all about, as well as what all motivates the mindset of Rafael Denis. So welcome in. Thanks for tuning in. Rafael, how are you, my friend?
Thank you, Bobby. I am good, man. Lucky and blessed to be here, brother. There's no question about it.
That's awesome. Cuban Superman. So I'm sure that insinuates the fact that you're from Cuba.
Yeah. So I was originally born in Cuba. I was there until I was about 10 years old. And then my parents went through a rigorous process to get to where we are today, to be here in the U.S. You know, it consisted of some governmental shenanigans and loops and hoops, and honestly they make it so it's impossible, and ultimately what they're trying to do is oust the people that are not pro-government so they can figure out who you are and make your life a living hell. Luckily for us, we were in a fortunate situation where my uncle, my mom's brother, was already here. And so he was able to supply us with some assistance financially, because the amount of money that the government asks is ridiculous in order to grant you the ability to legally leave the country. So we went through hell. We made it. Last few days, we were pretty much sleeping on the concrete floor. We didn't have anything, not that we had much to begin with. And so we were able to make it over to the U.S. legally via plane. You know, we arrived in Miami. My uncle picked us up, and we came straight to Naples. We skipped to the whole Miami scene and have been in Naples ever since 1998.
Outstanding. So you were 10 years old. How old are you now, Raf?
March 15th, I just turned 37.
So I would assume, I know just from my interactions with you that you express a lot of gratitude and thankfulness. And can you tell me and tell the folks a little bit about how it was in Cuba versus when you hit Naples? What was that transition like for you culturally?
It's extremely difficult to put into words. Just know that, you know, you went from a country where everyone's starving, there's no medication, there's just, it's poverty everywhere you look, to being able to purchase and work your way to having the majority of the things that a normal human should be able to do. So I gorged in food when I first got here, man. It was horrible. My parents saw it as, thank God we're able to give my kid food, you know, because I remember being in Cuba and having days where I didn't eat. You know, there was no food. Only thing I would eat was just like water with a little cube of flavoring that you put in it, and you know, not a lot of people know what that's like to go genuinely hungry for days. But anyways, I digress. I got here. I had access to all this wonderful food, and so I was, you know, eating like nobody's business, man. And I got fat. I mean, I had chin, fucking breasts, you name it. But I was a child, and I didn't know any better. My parents felt that at the time they were just able to do something incredible, which was feed me, you know, like they'd never been able to do before. So they went overhead too, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and so I hope that answers your question. I apologize if I got off topic.
No, it's great. I mean, again, you know, you seem to express gratitude and you're thankful.
Yes.
And, you know, when you come from lack, or you come from, you know, it's not readily available. You know, those cubes, they're called bouillon cubes. And
right.
As a youngster, my grandmother would put them in water, and, you know, and make broth for soups and stuff.
Right.
But
right.
Of course, with those soups, I was fortunate enough to have, you know, some meat and vegetables and things. But you were consisting on those alone with the water.
Right. It was just water with flavor, you know?
Yeah. Wow. Well, so you're coming into adolescence at this point, I'm thinking, right? And you're enjoying the fruits and everything, literally, and you're putting on some weight and stuff. When did you get involved in the realm of weightlifting, and how did that all come about?
So funny story. My dad had a unique situation back in Cuba. He knew. Well, first of all, let's talk about Cuba in the sense of like scarcity. You can't go to the stores and buy things. There is no store where you can say, "Oh, I want to go buy a piece of equipment." There is no such thing. So anything and everything you see there, to include the vehicles that are from the oh my God, this car's an antique, those cars are everything inside is handmade. So none of the parts are like you go to a store and you buy parts for a vehicle. Everything is made by somebody somewhere in the country. So, excuse me. My dad was in a unique situation where he had some friends who were welders. And so he was able to bring pictures from magazines to these friends who were welders. And so my dad would be like, hey, man, look, I'm going to, I'll get you this much money, or I'll barter with you because I have this and you don't have that. And then if you can help me build this machine. And so he had a gym. So I was always around weights. I had always exercised. I remember at a young age, I must have been like 7 or 8, going to the doctors. And my dad took me because my chest was splitting. And, he didn't know. And so he took me to the doctors, and they were like, oh, he's going to stunt his growth. You got to stop working out and all that. So to answer your question, I have always been into health and fitness, despite how my appearance was when I first arrived here, or shortly after arriving here, rather. So I was fully aware of what that was like. My dad's dad used to go to the park in Cuba, and he would pose. He would paint himself like all silver, like a statue. Yeah, he would pose at the park, and so we always knew about exercising and staying healthy and fit, and we just never had the nutritional aspect of it. And so I got here, got a little fat. I would say probably 3 years, give or take, maybe 4 years after being here. So I was like 14, maybe. I realized that this is not the path that I know, and this is not the path that I want to go in. And so I started really exercising rigorously. And the way I was able to was unique because, as you know, at 14 years old, you can't go to a gym and work out, right? I believe the standards are like 16 and you have to have a parent with you.
Yeah.
I was in a unique situation where my parents worked their ass off, pardon my French. And so they would do their day job, then they would do a midday job, and then in the evenings they would go clean for this other cleaning company. And so I would get picked up and get to go through these cleaning process with them, which took place in the county gyms, believe it or not.
There you go.
We would be in the county gyms after hours, and I'd be in the county gyms working out after hours while my parents cleaned the place. So that was the start of getting back into shape, and then it's been a beautiful challenge ever since, man.
It's been a wonderful journey. Yeah, what a coincidence. It's almost like, your grandfather was kind of into the physique and the aesthetics via the posing, being painted up as a sculpture, and of course your father being resourceful, getting the machinery built when there was really none. Right. So you take that mindset and you embark on this training regimen kind of under the radar as a young man, 14, with your parents in a cleaning business.
Yep.
You got into bodybuilding. I know you had a season with that. Yes. But I think you're really known for is your powerlifting. Walk me through that, because and we're going to get to the I want to share with everybody how you have ran into 2 really horrific back-to-back incidents that would sideline most mere mortals, but really that speaks to your mindset too. But take me through that bodybuilding short stint, and then how you matriculated or graduated into the powerlifting.
Yeah. So as I stated already, it was always in our family for people to exercise and pose and do the whole 9 yards. And we were much into the bodybuilding aspect of it. And so I got into it, and I competed in bodybuilding, and I loved it. It takes a great level of dedication, specifically with your nutrition and dieting. I feel like that was definitely the key factors. Anybody and everybody loves to exercise, at least people I know anyways. And so it was the diet that was really difficult for me. Yes. So I was dedicated as I am now. And I was able to, stick to what I was supposed to eat, and I did a good job. But it was one of those situations where I would get on stage and I would get frustrated because, I put in all this dedication and effort, and I didn't feel like it was the placement wasn't always what I thought should have been. And so I'm very competitive. And so going forward, I said, hey, yeah. And so I said, hey, man, like, how can I continue to do what I love to do, but be where I have more control of this outcome? And so I started dabbling with powerlifting, because in powerlifting, it's you still have to be pretty dedicated all around. I mean, you're not in a calories deficit, but you still have to eat a large amount of protein, and you have to do everything else. Everything has to be on point. One thing's off, and I mean, let's talk about just hydration alone. If you're dehydrated, that's a 10% strength loss. So if you were, let's use basic numbers, 100 pounds on the bench, now you're dehydrated, now you're only able to bench 90. So everything's got to be on point, even when it comes to powerlifting. The benefit is that you are not in a calorie deficit, so you're not necessarily as angry. But anyways, so I got into the powerlifting because I wanted to be in control of my outcome. So if I got first place, because it was based on my results, not because on opinions or whatever the situation was. And so I did well, man. I was blessed to do really well. I think my last competition that I did a 750 pound squat.
Lightweight.
And then what's funny about it is it felt really easy. I think I have a picture, and it's like I'm performing the squat and I got my tongue sticking out. I'm like, And so I could have done more, but
ain't nothing.
Yeah. And then my bench, I think on the comp was like 418. I did get 450 in the gym, but it doesn't count when it's in the gym because you're not under supervision. The weights could be buried, your butt could have been lifted, all those things. And then my deadlift on a comp, the best I think was 675, but I did pull 700 in the gym. And so, I really enjoyed it, man. It was a lot of fun for me. I feel like even in my early stages with the calorie deficit, I always felt like I was pretty strong compared to most. And I don't do powerlifting competitions anymore, but I do still lift, I would say, heavier than most. The reasons for that is because I'm lucky and blessed to have two businesses, one of which is in the health and wellness aspect. So we help manage fitness centers or different country clubs, very predominant country clubs in town. And then I own a security company. And so both facets of those businesses require me to be
in shape.
And so I can tell you from being around people that everyone interacts differently with you based on your appearance, right? If you look like a slob, I feel like people are not going to give you the time of day than if you look like someone who has their life put together, not just financially, but also physically, right? That's just been what I've witnessed myself.
Well, you know what? I think to that point, it shows discipline, right? It shows that you're paying attention. I know that when I show up and I'm in good shape, in sales from that regard, if I stop in and I see a client, well, they're going to say, look, the guy from all outward appearances, like you say, looks like he's got his stuff together. He's disciplined. He clearly watches what he eats, et cetera. If he pays that much attention to himself or his appearance, clearly he's going to, have an eye for that same towards my business, goals and stuff. But getting back to, the bodybuilding versus the control or more control of the outcome you have at the weight, the powerlifting. I do agree with you. I think that you can show up and do everything right by the letter of the law, hydrate, eat properly, diet, all the supplementation, show up on stage. And I think it's in the world of bodybuilding, my experience has been, it's far too subjective.
Yes.
And when you are either you bench 405 or you don't bench 405.
Right.
So it's, as long as you're on point and, you meet the criteria, but it's far less subjective.
Yes.
And you look to the left or the right and you're going, I don't know, man, I think I got this. But for whatever reason, political, whatever it is, there's too many factors outside of our control, right? And that sucks.
Yeah. And I feel like, while it sucks for the men, I mean, I've seen it, for the women, I think it's even worse.
Oh, I can imagine.
I
Yeah.
don't want to sit here and bash on bodybuilding. So
No, I love bodybuilding. Don't get me wrong. It's a big part of my life.
even when I was powerlifting, I still loved bodybuilding and kept up who was what where.
But that's just an observation I've noticed, and it's funny that you say, because you do have more control over your outcome. Plus, you're not in a caloric deficit all the time, which is a big bonus, right?
Correct. Yeah, man. Again, it sounds like we're bashing, but we're just talking experience. I've been backstage of a bodybuilding competition a lot, and the camaraderie on a bodybuilding backstage versus the camaraderie on a powerlifting platform is night and day difference. So I've seen guys take stuff off of bags from other people, food, whatever, and throw it away, do shenanigans just because they are so set on trying to win, and they're so, I want to use the term that's very known in our industry, and it's hangry, right? Like they're hangry at the world. They hate the world and everything and done some shady stuff versus you go to a powerlifting competition and I've been with an athlete.
Everybody's sharing,
his equipment, right? Like he doesn't have his knee wraps, or he traveled and got on a plane and came over here and now he forgot his knee wraps. What's he going to do? Well, the person next to him is like, hey man, use mine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like no one's trying to like everyone there is genuinely pushing each other because we understand that the better you do, the better I'm going to do, because I'm in a competition with myself, but I'm in competition with you today, right?
Yeah.
So today, if you do 500, I'm going to put 501. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So you're going that extra pound.
Well, it's quantitative, it's measurable.
Right.
So you take and you have these two careers that you speak of. You have the wellness centers and the fitness facilities where you employ a number of people, over a dozen, to facilitate training needs for the people that live within those communities. But you have this other venture which requires strength and agility, but also requires mental agility. I mean, you have to be on your A game. You started and founded Elite Shield Florida. Tell us a little bit about how you got into that and where it's going, where it is and where it's going.
So Elite Shield Security is the proper name. I apologize, Bobby.
My bad. Okay.
No, it's all good, brother. And so Elite Shield Security was a beautiful thing, and the way it came to be was interesting. So I have a good friend of mine who's in the security industry, and he's been in it a lot longer than I have. And he approached me and was like, "Hey, man, I know you've been injured and you're down, and you should consider coming into the security industry." And I was like, "Oh man, thanks, I appreciate that. I don't know. Let me think about it, and I'll see." And he's like, "Oh man, like I might be misquoting him, but it was something along the lines of like your demeanor, your personality, and who you are." And what I know of you, I think you'd be a great fit in the industry, and I'd love to work with you. And I was like, I'm flattered, man. Like, that's awesome. I'll think about it. And then this individual who's a friend, and then another friend who don't know each other at all. So second person approaches me within the span of that week, and he's a lawyer. And he's like, hey, I think you should look into security, private security. I want to start an agency, and I want you to be the manager for my security agency. And I was like, what? Like, what the heck? And like, I believe in God. I think that he comes knocking, and it's up to us to listen, man. So I felt like if that's not a sign of God coming and knocking on your door with an opportunity that he feels you're
then nothing is.
Right, exactly. I mean, these two people do not know each other at all, right? Yeah. And so I thought that was pretty wild. So then I listened. And so I did the proper procedures. When I was able to, I went and I shot and I qualified after having done all the testing. And so I got my credentials through the state to become an armed security officer. And awesome. So I consider myself to be a really nice guy. And in the process of being a nice guy, you get to interact with some wonderful people and people who appreciate you and, probably want to see you succeed in life. So that opens up a lot of connections for me.
Yes, it does.
And so my security career was expedited more than most. So the average security officer, may be in the field for years and never do any executive protection work. They may just do what we call static security, which encompasses basically being at a gatehouse or walking the mall or a facility or maybe after hours somewhere that requires security after hours, right? Which I did for probably eight months, give or take, when I got into the industry, and I paid my dues. I felt in that process, but I felt like there was a lot of talent that I had that wasn't being put to its full perspective. And so I've always been in to a degree, I've always been in the martial arts industry. I've been blessed enough to have some amazing acquaintances and friends in the sheriff's office. So I've always been able to do the security field from that perspective, right? Like I have self-defense skills. I have disarming skills. I am obviously fit and in shape. I'm good shot. I'm, situationally aware. And then going through the courses and classes, I mean, I took an executive protection class in Tampa, which was great. It was phenomenal. It taught us a lot. But once again, it really consisted of like how much I learned from the peers in the class. And that brings me to what I was going to say next. So my security career was expedited. And I believe, once again, the big guy is the only person I have to give credit to, So I go to this executive protection class. I meet some amazing people in there, people who had done dignitary work already, and they just basically had to go through this course to get the state credentials, to work here in the state of Florida. And so in this executive protection class, you do like a mock training, you do some advanced work and all this stuff. And the guys I noticed that were in the class were very knowledgeable, and I was like, man, I need to freaking pay attention and ask these guys questions. And the instructor was phenomenal. I'm not knocking them, but I felt like at the end of the day, I learned more from my peers in that class than the class itself. And so that they contacted me. One of the guys from the class was like, hey man, I have a client who's moving down to, believe it or not, Naples, Florida. Isn't that where you live? And I was like, yeah, that's where I live. He's like, all right, well, listen, she needs some help with security. Would you be interested? And I was like, yeah, let's go, And so that brought me to an amazing opportunity where I was able to work with the security detail that this individual already had. And I was working with them for 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. And she was a political figure who was kind of controversial, a great person. To this day, I stay in touch with her and the team. And if they call me up and they say, hey, man, we need a hand, I'm there. There's no questions. Assuming the schedule is available, of course, right? So great relationship. I left that relationship and I went on to work for a family for a year. My first trip with this family was pretty comical. So I get contacted by a friend who owns a security company, and he says, hey, I have a really great opportunity, but it's like last minute and you're going to have to travel outside the country. I'm like, say more. You know what I mean? Like, what do you got? And so he's like, you're going to have to go to Italy. I was like, okay, I can do that. So I call my wife and I'm like, babe, I have to go to Italy. She's like, what? Well, she's a big traveler, we both are, but she loves to travel. And so when she heard that I got that I had an opportunity that I could work security in Italy, she was all about it. She was like very supportive. And so I'm like, oh, can you find my passport? And so she looks at my passport, and I shit you not, Bobby, my passport had expired. This was on Wednesday.
Oh no.
Wednesday. The family was flying out on Friday.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So we hopped online. We found so I don't know if you ever had any issues with passports, but in order to have your passport done, like there's certain branches in the United States that have availability, right? Like it's not like you can just go to Miami tomorrow and have your passport done. That's not how it works.
Right.
So we hopped online. My wife did. She found a location in Texas that had an open availability the Thursday in the morning to have my passport done, and I could leave there with a passport. So what do? I book a flight. I go to Texas. I sleep for maybe like 3 or 4 hours. I go to the freaking thing when it opens. I book the paperwork for my passport. I fly back. Barely made the flight, by the way. I literally was running across the airport, and I found myself in the TSA line at one point when I arrived. And the line was huge. And it's like, it was a fucking movie scene, man. I'm not going to make my flight. Like, what am I going to do? This family's depending on me. Like, I told this person I was going to be there.
Gave him my word.
I traveled to fucking Texas to get my passport done, Yeah. And so I get to the airport. There's this ginormous TSA line. And it's like, I kid you not, man. It's like, I wish I had a camera crew with me. I was like, this is either going to go really well and people are going to be like, go ahead,
or you're going to get locked up.
Or we're get arrested, right? So I'm like, hi. I yell like really loud. I am so sorry, but this is the last flight back home for me. If you guys could please just let me go to the front of the line, I will forever be grateful. I have this amazing opportunity. I need to make it back home for.
You don't understand.
I shit you not. And like, it was amazing. Like the crowd was so understanding, I don't even know how I got so lucky. And the TSA guy was giving me dirty looks, but the people were like, yeah, man, come on. I think it was just my demeanor, like I was, so I get to the front of the line and I get on I'm running and I'm the last one getting on the plane, man. And it was like, it was incredible, once again.
It happened.
The big guy.
Exactly.
And so I'm on the flight. I buy the Wi-Fi on the flight, and I'm calling my wife and I'm telling her what to pack and what to put in the airport or in the luggage.
Yeah.
And I'm at the same time, while I appreciate my friend giving me this opportunity, he didn't necessarily give me any due diligence, right? So normally, like as an agency owner, when I send a guy on a detail, I try to do the advance work for them. And
cover all the many bases as you can, yeah.
Right. So like I'll be like, hey, here's the do's and don'ts with the client. The client's like this, they don't like that. They prefer to have this water in the vehicle. They prefer to, get up at this time. This is the do's and don'ts for them, whatever. And my buddy, unfortunately, didn't supply me with any of that. So on the flight, after I get done telling Sarah exactly what to pack, I start like doing my homework. Like, all right, what am I looking for in Italy? Like, what are the scams?
Learning on the fly, literally.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, what are the scams in Italy that I need to look out for?
Yeah.
Where's the embassy located in the
pickpockets?
Right.
The embassy.
So, yeah. So like, I'll tell you a pretty wild thing that they did over there in Italy is they would have these people who have bracelets, right? And they come up to you with these bracelets and they're like, oh, you got to try it on. And they put the bracelet on you. And then they're like, all right, that'll be $5. And you're like, wait, I don't want the freaking bracelet, dude. Like, oh, it looks so beautiful. So now you're engaged in this back and forth with them.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing they would do is they had paintings and they would put the paintings on the floor. And as you're walking by, they would accidentally kick the painting forward. You step on the painting. Now they tell you, oh, you ruined my painting. That's going to be $20, And so it was one of those situations where you had to be aware that was happening. And we interact, even though I told these, because I didn't just go there with the client. I went with the client and some of the friends. So there was, at one point we had like met up with other friends that were there. And so there's 11 of them and me. So it was like a lot of herding sheep and trying to inform them of things in advance and hoping that they were listening and crossing their, T's and dotting my I's. And, yeah, man, I was doing a lot of homework. Let me just say that. Like you said, I was doing a lot of homework on the fly. Successfully, I executed the mission and was able to keep everybody safe. And, we had an incident with a person, that same thing I just told you about with the painting. Where they threw it, even though I had a discussion with them in advance and I prompted them on some things that we may run into while we're out and about.
It happened.
Yeah.
At least he was abreast of the situation.
Right. But I was aware of what that was like now. And so right away, as soon as they tried to pull that nonsense with the painting, I was like, oh, get the cops. We're going to call the cops.
Absolutely. Not putting up with that crap.
And as soon as you say that, they're like, oh, no, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
They know they're doing some illegal shit, And
Absolutely.
so we just went about our business. But yeah, man, it was working with that family was wonderful. It was what I would say the most individuals in the security industry strive for, which is a full-time job assigned to an individual and running security for them, which is what I did. I was their lead person and I ran security for them, and it allowed for these individuals, money was not, I shouldn't probably say this, but they were very flexible.
It was secondary, yeah.
Yeah, money was flexible for them. So we were able to execute our job very well. If we needed, if I felt the resources were needed, I would just tell them and they would
just raise your hand and it was available.
Yep.
Yeah,
so,
that's a great position to be in.
Oh yeah, man. It made it so like I and the team got to do some really wild stuff.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. So in that same executive protection class that I told you about, I had a gentleman in there who was like very techie, and so we had one of the details we did was like a wedding for the son in Texas. And one of the guys, the techie guy that I knew from the executive protection class, I called him up and I said, hey, man, we got this wonderful gig where, we're going to be coming to Texas and I'm going to need more guys. Here's the dates. And are you available? And he's like, let's go. And I said, here, well, there's a catch. And he's like, what? And he's like, I told him, we're going to need you to bring your toys. And he's like, what do you mean? Yeah, of course. What toys? What do you need? like, Glock 19, AR, what are you talking about?
Oh,
Like,
toys.
those toys. I said, we're going to need you to bring some of your surveillance toys. And he's like, done. So he had this badass setup where he was essentially flying drones the whole time the venue was happening. He had a drone up in the air doing like aerial surveillance of the property from the drone.
Next level shit. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, it was freaking awesome.
Yeah.
We got to do, we would do like 3-car caravans with SUVs. One time we had the 3 SUV caravan plus a damn bus in the middle. So we got
like a Secret Service.
Yeah. So the way that execution happens is like the person in the back turns in, blocks the traffic, and then everybody else comes over. And I'm just, dude, I'm lucky and blessed that I have such incredible people by my side because none of this could have been really possible without the team.
Well, let's not sell yourself short too. You made a comment earlier about moving to the front of the line. You took a bold chance, right? You had a pair on you. You were desperate, back against the wall, and you took a shot. You could have been arrested, or you could go to the front of the line. But because of the way you were sincere about it, you were authentic, you were transparent. You really, you had a need, and these people were good enough to part like the Red Sea and lead you to the front of the class. The other takeaway is that everything seems to dovetail for you in terms of your interests. And what's greater than earning money at your interest? I know you like to fire at firearms. I know you like to hand combat. I know you like to powerlift. I know you like to train. And it's no wonder that one individual asked you and then another individual asked you, unbeknownst to each other, about the same field. Like you say, your Heavenly Father was just like looking out for you. And when he came and knocking, you responded. So, folks, we are talking with Rafael Denis, and unique, colorful story. You can find Rafael and follow along with him at the Cuban Superman on Instagram, on that platform. Look him up. You'll be glad you did. He does showcase some of his shenanigans out back at the back 40, taking target practice and things of that nature. He's insightful. He's funny. I know you're a big fan of a support staff or support people around you that are supportive. Your wife in particular. I know that that when you were training, got married, you went from single guy to meeting your wife to getting married to having a kid, a beautiful little girl. And what happened was I noticed a lot of clamoring around that people were kind of doubting. They were, oh, you'll never be back to the gym and stuff. And what I want to know from you is, what's the difference between doubters and doers? I know, looking at that situation in particular, the doubters were kind of in the bleachers eating popcorn, right? They weren't participating. They had no idea what was going on the field, which was you training and having a solid relationship with your wife. What emphasis do you put on support, my brother?
Oh, man. I could, I'm lucky and blessed that I put my best foot forward and I give it 100% effort, but none of what I've achieved today could have been done without the team, and my wife is part of that team. There's no question about it. And as far as the haters go, man, they're out there. They're always going to be out there. I feel like if you don't have any haters, then you're not doing something right.
You're not doing something right. Exactly.
And, a lot of people put this is an old saying that's been around since before you and I were born. People put their limitations onto you, man. This guy married, whoever, and he was unhappy in his marriage. And so he feels that now every marriage is going to be the same as his, which is not true, right? You cultivate what you freaking put effort into. And, I've been blessed that I've done what I feel is the right thing by my wife and my family always. And so I've cultivated a beautiful relationship, and it has paid me back in such ways that I'm able to do what I do with the support of my wife. Yeah, man, when we had our first little one, people were like, oh, you're never going to be able to exercise anymore, this and that. No, that's all nonsense.
I think it's how you prioritized everything. Right. I mean, if you bought into that, you'd have been like, yeah, you're right, I'll never hit a weight again. And wasn't the case. Right.
No, not at all. So, is it foolish to say that you still have the same 24 hours in a day? It is.
It is foolish. Yeah. You just have to reprioritize.
Now it's your wife, your daughter, and not just yourself anymore, right? So you just have to be smart, Like, I try to do the best I can to be at the gym early in the morning with every time I can. That way I knock that out and I have time for them. And if I'm not able to knock it out in the morning and I try to sneak it in midday, maybe I can't always train the 2 hours that I want to train. So maybe sometimes I got to do 45-minute sessions, or maybe I'll have to go in on a weekend because I couldn't do it during the week, or maybe I'll have to train late. I mean, I always joke around when people see me in there all the time and they're like, "Oh man, do you ever go home?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do go home. That's why you see me all the time, because I get it in when I can, how I can, where I can,
Right.
So I think as long as you're true to your desires, and hopefully they're all great, and you figure out a way on how to stay active, how to stay motivated, because man, the only person that's ever going to accomplish anything in life is you. If you want something, you're going to make it happen no matter what the odds are. And that has to include your well-being and your health, because if you're not healthy and you're not capable of assisting anybody else, right? You're in a plane, shit starts going south. What's the first thing they tell you to do? Put your mask on and then help somebody else, right? Because if you can't help yourself, how can you help anybody else, right? You're useless. Yeah. You become a liability, right? Which is another reason why I try to do the best I can to be proficient in my job, is because if you're not good at what you're doing, you're just a liability now, right? So instead of people depending on you to cover their six or whatever their spot is, now you're becoming a liability, right? Like, if I can't pick you up when something goes south and carry you out of that fire, if I can't get the client out of the X, then what am I doing? I'm just a fucking face that's there, with the hopes that that's enough. That's never enough, So.
Going to close out with this question. What would Rafael, as 10-year-old Rafael, say to present day Rafael? What would your present day self say to 10-year-old Rafael in terms of what you've learned, and where do you see yourself? Now you're the successful business owner of two businesses, 2 enterprises. 10-year-old Rafael, he had a question mark on his forehead, right? What would you tell that young man?
Man, that's a great question. I would say nothing's impossible. Look how far you've come. Chase your dreams. Don't worry about the haters, and use that as fuel to move forward. That's what I would say. Look, it's no secret. I was never in the military, right? And people, when I got into the security industry, were like, "Oh, that's for ex-military individuals, right?" And the reality is that I know many people who have been in the military and have not been able to achieve what I have, because it's not about it's a stigma, right? Like, it's not the reality. The reality is that it takes so much effort and everything else to encompass success. It's not just like you have to be this in order to have this. How many short basketball players are there? There's quite a bit, right? I'm sure in their process of coming up, someone along the lines told them, "Hey, you're never going to succeed because you're not fucking 7 foot tall," right? Now they're out there proving them wrong every day. So don't listen to the haters. Do what you want to do and go after your goals like your life depends on it, because it does. You know what I mean?
There you have it, folks. Wise words of wisdom. We have been talking once again with Rafael Denis, the Cuban Superman, and we thank you for joining us. We thank you for your ear holes. We thank you for your eyeballs. Check him out at The Cuban Superman on the Instagram platform. You'll be glad you did. And until next time, folks, please take good care.
Thank you, Bob.
You've been listening to another episode of the Motivated Mindset Podcast with your host, Bobby Stein. Thank you for tuning in.